Everybody, it's Patrick at ThePitchStack, and you decided to click on this video in hopes to learn one of the hardest heroes in Flesh and Blood, Kano, Dracai of Aether. We'll be talking about his pros and cons, his offense, his defense, and his equipment with tips and tricks for you to use. Let's get straight into it. When looking at Kano's toolkit, you'll see some advantages to playing him over other aggro decks in Flesh and Blood. Let's take a look at some of those. Firstly, you have a good bit of damaging attacks that multiply to the next card in the form of buffs. Small arcane into big arcane, making you come up with some spicy damage no one else can do but you. This can bring the games that Kano plays to end incredibly quick based on the draws from your deck, and is the only hero to achieve a turn 0 OTK, though it is quite rare for it to happen. The multipliers have to line up with large combo enders like Blazing Aether to make 40 damage at the end. Second, you have instant speed interaction on your turn and your opponent's turn. You have interlacing combos that can be pretty complex to unravel during that game, and once you have solved those complexity of that turn and make it into a high damage combo, that's when the dopamine to the brain kicks in. The joy from solving the puzzle is the Kano crack that all players chase when they're presented with a good brain teaser. Third, you are currently the #1 deck in Flesh and Blood for in-game deck manipulation, allowing you to control what you draw, when you draw it, and what order you draw those cards. You fix and control a good portion of your deck with cards like Aether Spindle and Gazy Ages. Even cards that aren't wizard cards such as Potion of Deja Vu, as it can bring interactions like no other deck. Fourth, you are the meta-defining Dark Horse hero in Flesh and Blood. Currently only one wizard exists in Classic Constructed, and it's Kano. So usually people have to be on their toes if they want to bring in sideboard slots for a hero that has such a small representation. The other decks out there have to bring in Arcane Barrier or other ways of stopping combo starters, or suffer the possibility of dying within 2 turns. For the reasons that it's good to play Kano, there are way more reasons not to play Kano. Let's take a look at some of those. Number 1. Oasis Respite and other damage prevention cards, such as cards that have the keyword ward, are being printed past Kano's original set release. These cards are cards that quickly shut down the combos that Kano only has one chance to have it land successfully, or they die trying. Number 2. Most of the cards in Kano's deck are extremely underrated. For example, Sonic Boom, if played from the top of the deck with Kano's ability, has Sonic Boom to become a 3-card 3 damage spell at its base damage. The on-damage trigger can increase that damage output, but only if the opponent has the AB to decrease that free card cost. Not just Sonic Boom, but all other cards banished off Kano's ability force that card off the top to become unknown and have a severe decrease in the damage of rate equal to the number of cards played. Basically, it adds a +3 to the resource of all the cost of the cards. Number 3, starting with a 25% lower life compared to most of the other heroes in Flesh and Blood, puts Kano at a faster clock to find his combo pieces before aggro matchups can kill you. Kano is almost forced to say no blocks just like any other aggro versus aggro game, but the 10 life difference makes Kano more fragile compared to other aggro heroes when combined with no armor blocks as well. Number 4, when trying to combo off, complex lines can be presented in the moment and may not be very obvious to you on what's the most optimal damage that you can send to your opponent. The wrong buff here, or wrong ordering there, will lead you to learn that Kano is extremely min-max when it comes to the value of his deck and his cards, to the point where the longer the game comes on, the more compounding those little efficiencies add up to a possible loss. Number 5. Having to know your opponent's deck pretty well might come as a shock, as probably most players can apply that to their hero and use it in a way that benefits them, i.e. they blocked with a Command and Conquer, I'm safe to Arsenal card. But with Kano, you have to pay attention to play patterns, what cards they pitched to Arcane Barrier, the cost value of that card that they pitched, to guess what other resources they have, and the attack value they pitched for an attack that's coming at you. You see a blue Cranial Crush being pitched for Anathos for 4 damage on a full hand. Maybe the rest is all reds and they want to protect against a combo that you send, or Pummel might be sent during the reaction step. These things hurt Kano way more than the average aggro deck. Number 6. No blocking armor is pretty self-explanatory as a deficit. No need to explain sadly. Number 7. Currently, there's only one way of building Kano successfully, and that boils down to Wildfire combo build, as it forces the most amount of damage the fastest. This makes Kano iterations to be very rigid in the competitive scene for Classic Constructed. Look at Bolton for example, as he was mostly a combo deck until Dusk Until Dawn was released, and it helped the Raiden build significantly in some of the areas that it was weak on. If you're a player that is wanting to play Kano in a different build such as Brainstorm Kano and wanting to draw a bunch of cards for a bunch of 1 damage pings, you will realize that it's fun to build around, but right now those deck variations are much less competitive than the current Kano. Now let's take a look at Kano's defense. When you are heroes such as Kano bringing nothing but yourself and 30 life to the table, one of the most important questions you're going to be asking yourself is, when do I block with a card? So let's take a look at some of the questions that you should ask yourself following the thought of wanting to block. The very first questions that you should ask when an opponent starts each turn with an attack should be, can I kill with this hand reliably? No? Then let's go on to the next question. Because some combo lines guarantee damage, such as Wildfire Lesson Blazing, and those are reliable. Blind Flip combos are not reliable. Second question should be, if I can't kill, can I use this card that I'm blocking with on my own turn? If I can, does using it on my own turn help me achieve my game plan more than blocking with it? This is key to understanding how you block. Do you have 4 random blues in your hand and a combo piece in arsenal? Well, you might need to take into account the RNG of blind flipping off the top on their turn. Blind flipping might force you to block this turn rather than taking damage to the face in order to trust RNG for the damaging factor of your hand. Third question, if I can't kill, do you have something in your hand that will force the opponent to pitch on your turn? If there's a card that does so, save it for your turn and force the opponent to have a much less impactful turn if they pitch to Arcane Barrier. Have 1 red spindle and 1 blue, well then you can probably block with the other 2 cards if possible, and then enter a more tempo plan for that turn. Fourth question, if I can't kill, are there any on hits that the opponent is presenting? Someone like Katsu or Zelia is going to bring more on hits than OG Dash for aggro matchups, so try to focus on the most impactful on hits to block to lessen the strong turn from your opponent. Which of their on hits has more merit than the others? Dominate's fine if you can survive, but a plus X on hit allows your block 6 to have better value. Fifth question, if I can't kill, what does blocking do to further my plan? Establish your plan once your opponent has revealed their equipment. An OG Dash with Induction Chamber plus Teklo base arms very well might be Control Dash, which might mean you need to pitch stack for second cycle OTK. But OG Dash brings Pounder plus Goliath Gauntlet, then you might have to race them for the win. Figure out the life threshold of each AB bracket. Is your opponent under the life threshold of the combo line? If not, you might need to present more damage on your turn to get them low enough. Does blocking allow me to live long enough to get them within that life threshold of the AB that they present? Things like that. Sixth and final question. If I can't kill, can I send enough damage on my combo turn that I can survive a reset turn of taking damage of no blocks in order to send enough damage on my turn the following turn? Enter the Psycho game plan of aggro racing. This was a plan that has been touched on by WeMakeBest Kano turn 2 plans for aggro matchups, but it's something that you need to ask yourself if you don't want to block that turn, that your hand can convert their life to single digits. Basically, if you go second, send as much damage as you can, turns 0, 1, and 2. Then convert post combo. This plan forces you to say no blocks to everything that your opponents send, and actually have you play psychological warfare with them. Snap no blocks and everything that I'm sending to this Kano? Okay, I'm terrified right now. Get them to think something like that. So that was defense, but sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and that's where Kano looks like a glass cannon to some, as they know how much damage that Kano can bring. So let's talk about some of the basic 101 combos that you need to send on your opponent's turn. The classic Wildfire Lesson Blazing combo is the most famous damage line, as it is the most consistent way of doing max damage. With Wildfire starting the combo chain, the most that you can get Wildfire up to is 6 consistently. On this line, each point is plus or minus 5 damage to the entire combo line, which at its base is going to be 26 damage. With the max being 36 damage to a fully buffed Wildfire, it isn't the most that the line can do, as you can find yourself getting less than buffed with Metacarpus nodes, making the line become 38 damage instead. This combo line is a minimum of 10 resource that needs to get the combo off the ground, bringing 26 damage. But with 4 blues and a tunic resource, 13 resources gives you the most damage at 38 damage being presented. With Wildfire being the combo starter, that buff that Wildfire brings can be applied to another multiplier such as Aether Flare. Wildfire, Aether Flare, and Blazing is the most damage for that line, but another random card ender at the end instead of Blazing can still do massive damage, as it's another consistent damage combo line. As long as you have the resources to pay for everything, your blind flip off the top forces that card to be your combo ender. Then you're going to need to hunt for blue off of Ragamuffin's hat to make sure you have the max resources to pay for everything. The standard Wildfire for 4 makes Aether Flare become 7, then the X card at the end of the combo will have a plus 11 boost applied to it. The minimum resources for this combo is going to be 10. Wildfire is going to be 3, which is boots plus its 2 cost. The blind flip for 3 on the Kano ability. Aether Flare is going to have a banish switch with the Ragamuffin's hat, which is another 3. And then the 1 to play the flare. The combo ending piece is going to force you to know how much you can afford for the entire combo. So it's best to blind flip, see the end combo piece, and Ragamuffin switch for the Aether Flare, and then you can know the entire math of your combo line. For more complex and advanced combo lines, please visit the video done by WeMakeBest for a complete combo line. Link will be down in the description below. I hope you guys learned something from that video. Now, when it comes to the combo time, something that you need to realize is the ordering of the combo actually does make a difference whether or not the combo is going to be successful or even be completed in the first place. The ordering is not necessarily the order of the activation of cards or abilities, but where those cards might be in your hand or arsenal. One combo that is not great in this way, Wildfire is going to be in arsenal, Snapback Flare plus 2 blues in hand. The text on Flare here is the reason this hand combination doesn't work effectively. Flare wants to buff the next card that's played, and we can't use Ragamuffin's hat on the Flare until we've cleared the Snapback from hand after Wildfire is resolved. So it leads to Wildfire into Snapback into Flare with no Flare buff on the Snapback. With this same combo, change the position where Snapback is in arsenal and you have Wildfire in hand. Use Storm Striders on Wildfire or Flare, and then you can use Ragamuffin's hat for the other card, allowing you to get the Flare buff to hit on Snapback at the end for the max damage. When it comes to the order of abilities, you need to make sure that the common Wildfire lesson line needs to be Kano, hold priority, boots, or Crucible of Aetherweave activation, hold priority, Kano, hold priority, then Ragamuffin's hat. Then you need to let everything resolved until the very last Kano activation. If you have the Kano line to be something like this, Storm Striders, Kano, Kano, then you're going to mess up the combo, as the last Kano needs to be Blazing Aether off the Lesson in Lava Surge. However, ordering your combo in such a way to allow hidden information from your opponent and have it to where nothing's showing but your Wildfire combo starter. That can look something like Kano, Kano, Storm Striders, Ragamuffin's hat, as Wildfire will be resolving before the first 2 Kanos resolve, giving you the upper hand. Alright, so let's take a look at Kano's equipment suite here. You have Storm Striders, which is the bread and butter. If you have to spend any money on a Kano deck, this is the only legendary that you should get for the deck, as it makes or breaks the deck. Then you have Fyendal Spring Tunic for your slower matchups, and then you're going to have Spellfire Cloak for your faster aggro matchups. Spellfire can actually be another budget option if you don't have Fyendal Spring Tunic and you're just starting out for Flesh and Blood, so keep that in mind as well. For our arm piece, we're going to have Metacarpus nodes, as it allows us to buff the entire combo line if we have the resources for it, and give us more damage across the entire board. And for our headpiece, we're going to do Ragamuffin's hat. This effectively allows us to change a red for a blue. That's what we really hope for. So it changes a red to a blue, giving us a +2 on the resources and giving us a 0.5 Storm Striders, if you can kind of think of it that way, because you don't really know what's going to be on top, and you can effectively change that card from the top or bottom. A lot of people don't know that the bottom portion of Ragamuffin's hat can be useful. If you go with Wildfire and Arsenal plus Flare and 3 blues, but you know that the higher damaging line for the blind flip, you see an Aether Spindle. You can then go to an Aether Spindle line with the Wildfire and then bottom the red Flare to a blue. For our weapons, we're going to have 2 staff options as the best options. Crucible of Aetherweave is our main, and then Waning Moon is going to be for certain specific matchups. Sometimes you can use them in the Kano mirror matchup, and then you can use Waning Moon for Prism as well. Lastly, this ending portion of this video is going to be talking about tips and tricks that'll help you as you learn about taking this daunting task of mastering Kano. These tips and tricks are things that I have learned over many months of playing Kano competitively, and I feel like I'm still finding out new things every day, especially when the meta is presented with new fresh decks and new cards for everyone to play with. Those who have been playing Kano from the very beginning will still find out new ways to play the deck, so keep that in mind as you approach this intimidating hero. So the first thing you need to remember is take your time. I cannot stress this enough. This is a big factor when you play Kano. There are timed and untimed rounds when it comes to competitive Flesh and Blood. The big thing that you need to remember is when you play in tournaments, sometimes slow play can be called if you take more than 5 minutes or so to think about a decision. It is best to find a testing partner who understands that you are new to this hero, as well as the person being patient. Combo turns are usually the make or break portion of the game that can ultimately decide if you as the Kano player will win or lose. If the combo isn't obvious, tank in the moment for a few minutes. It's fine. Maybe let your opponent know that this might take a minute or 2 to figure out. Number 2, don't get discouraged when you lose a lot because Kano was in the alpha beta stages of the game when he was created. He is a complex hero through and through, with so many windows of opportunity that you don't know when you're supposed to respond for the most effective use of your cards. Not to mention, since he came from the beginning sets, there is a very obvious power creep that comes naturally with TCGs down the line. And Kano is considered outdated in the terms of cards that can defend against what Kano wants. That, and we haven't had a dedicated General Wizard set since he was released in Arcane Rising. Number 3, record any and all games that you have when you're playing Kano against someone. Testing and learning from your mistakes not only makes you an overall better player, but you learn the small mistakes in your Kano gameplay allows you to pinpoint your weaknesses. It is better than having to go off memory to know why you lost a certain game. Even those who have been playing him from the very start still have things that they can improve on, or they simply missed something that was obvious during a game and they didn't see it. Number 4, when playing Kano, don't get stuck with the idea that you have to always play on your opponent's turn. I see this time and time again from newer Kano players that rely on the RNG of blind flips, as you might be trading that 3 block value of your card that you're pitching to Kano, and then you're going to convert that into a lousy 1 or 2 damage. This gives your opponent an unnecessary advantage as they decide that that damage that you present on their turn doesn't kill them, or isn't worth pitching another card to prevent that damage, but instead they will see that you are 3 life points lower. That same tempo can be used on your turn to force your opponent to pitch towards Arcane Barrier, making their turn much less stronger. Number 5, this is going to be a slightly advanced tactic as you should learn this after you learn the basics of Kano first. I personally believe that all Kano players need to learn how to pitch stack for second cycle OTK kills. I'm a big advocate for this method when you're going up against matchups that are harder for you when it comes to getting across their equipment loadout. Learning how to pitch stack in Kano can transfer to other decks so much more than you might think. Some decks actually have to stack against other decks, such as Dory players needing to stack their threats against Bravos who are not letting their attacks come through. The OTK isn't as powerful for those games as it is for Kano's double Wildfire, double Blazing turns, but it is transferable for sure. Number 6. Getting around some outside prevention is slightly easier than some. With Ward being put in the game with some of the newer sets, combo depending, we can let the effect of Ward resolve before the main damage multiplier is resolved, and use a small arcane damage card to break the ward that is protecting the opponent. Same goes for the Radiant clothing that Bolton can bring. Even though it doesn't have Ward written on the card, it's still worded in the same way that Ward is, allowing you to try to cover the full 2 damage before the Wildfire damages the opponent. When it comes to Oasis Respite, there are ways to get around that card as it targets your Wildfire the most. So with stacking matchups, you can have your Wildfire come in for 4, have the Oasis target that first Wildfire, then before the Oasis resolves, you play a second Wildfire to have the buff cover the prevention that the Oasis will cover. With fast aggro matchups, we can't rely on this method as we can't reliably do double Wildfire combos as it takes time that we don't have and resources past the normal 13 max that we get with normal combos. Number 7, IPing yourself is a big deal in playing Kano. What this means is that you're holding a card on your turn and only using the 3 other cards in your hand, forcing you to draw 3 more cards instead of the full 4 cards that your hero allows. This hurts the most when it comes to stacking matchups as you're trying to accelerate to those cards as fast as possible while surviving the damage that your opponent presents. Holding one card over multiple turns compounds and compounds to where you might be 1 turn faster to your stack if you didn't do it 4 turns in a row. Aggro matchups don't really care too much about IPing yourself, except turn 0 when you're doing 0 blocks and using your entire hand for damage to close the life gap. Wildfire might be the only card that you care about to hold back if you have it in your opening hand, but that might be situational as you flip Lesson and Lava turn 0, just use the Wildfire to pay for that Lesson to find another Wildfire anyway. Number 8, keep your options open when you're playing Kano. What this means is don't force what you pitch or play on your turn to determine what you have to do for your later turns. For example, you might have 2 blues, 1 red Aether Flare and 1 blazing. Of course, 1 card off the top with Flare can have a huge damage, but you need to arsenal your blazing to get a fresh hand of 4 cards. Blocking blazing in your arsenal can force you to need to rip off the combo as soon as possible, as you might not have a good turn for blazing on your turn to be played. A card like Aether Flare is much more open to being a tempo play, as blazing is much more of a combo play. Another example could be that you have 1 red Spindle, 2 blues, and a Tome of Findle in your hand. You don't need to use that tome for pitching anything that turn, as it could be a nice arsenal target, and with you using it for pitch that turn, you're saying that you would have a suboptimal blue in arsenal, or maybe no arsenal at all. Staying flexible allows your Kano lines to be more fluid. And that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you learned a lot about what Kano has to offer, and if you have other people who are wanting to try Kano for the first time, please pass this video along to them as I know they will appreciate all the help that they can get. Thank you so much and have a good one.